Hey, I've been on the Rooster Show. I know it's not about yacht rock, lame music. It's about edgy, punk, metal. Get
Hello, my friends, and welcome to a very special edition of the Rooster Show. We have a band that has basically got me into metal music. I love Vengeance, and today we're going to hear a story for one of the members, Roger Dale Martin, and he was the bassist of them, and many other projects. He's in Reign of Glory now, which we'll have on the show coming up. And so this is exciting, actually. So here we are. Hello.
Hello, Rooster.
Hello, Roger. Wow, welcome. So nice to see you.
Good to see you too, my brother.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Love the Lord with all my heart, first and foremost, just want to say. And I appreciate you being here. This is you guys were your music was monumental and to get me into loving metal music, and so I appreciate it. This means the world to me, and so I just wanted to lay that out flat first of all. So thank you very much for being here.
And you're welcome. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Wow, you have a very impressive discography of bands that you were in, starting with Emerald and going to Die Happy, Once Dead, and now Reign of Glory, which I hope to have on the show. So we're not going to talk much about that. We'll talk about that when you get on the show again for Reign of Glory, because I would love to hear that story. So, I congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I have not read it, but I hope to hear some of that here and get some questions resolved. And because honestly, Vengeance was the band that really opened my eyes to Christian metal, and it's like all a big question mark in my head of what happened with that band in that project, because it seemed like it was pretty legit. And what I mean is guided by the Holy Spirit, and all that. But I would like you to tell your story if you don't mind, as I would really love to hear what happened with all that, and then we'll get into some of your newer projects as well. And
Okay.
so
Well, I look
I
forward
know
to
that
it.
Human Sacrifice started in 1988, and which is an amazing album, which I have on right now. Um, and it's timeless. So I'd like to leave you with the floor. I don't want to put a bunch of questions at you. I would like you to tell your story if you don't mind. And
Oh, now how far you want to go back?
let's how did Vengeance start?
The vengeance started with an idea of a pastor. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pastor Bob Beeman,
Yes,
but
sir.
in the beginning of Christian metal, I think maybe the first Christian metal band ever was a band called Stryper. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys or not.
Stryper?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yellow Black Attack, baby.
yeah. I mean, they were the one band that pretty much put Christian metal on the map. But what those guys used to do would throw Bibles out in the audience.
Oh,
Okay,
that's so cool.
that was part of their show. And there was a few people who actually took them home and read them. And those people formed a Bible study. And the Bible study grew and grew, and it became a church called Sanctuary. And the pastor of
Sanctuary
Sanctuary
Praise.
was, the pastor of Sanctuary was Pastor Bob Beeman. And a lot of the congregation was made up of a lot of Christian metal bands, Neon Cross, Holy Soldier. There was, let's see who else was around at the time. Eternal Rot, there's a band called Recon. And it was made up of Christian metal bands and Christian metal fans. And
Of all of
during
them.
that,
Love them all.
during that time period, it was mostly, I guess this was probably 1984, 1985, and hair metal. And this was in Los Angeles, California. At the time, it was definitely the capital of heavy metal in Los Angeles, California. It was capital in the whole world. We're talking about bands like Motley Crue was one of the first bands that brought back the metal movement, and and so we were right there at the scene when it was. It's like number one in the United States there in LA, and so we were at the right place at the right time. And so Barren Cross was one of the bands. There was a lot of these bands, but they were all hair metal bands, you might say.
Yeah, definitely.
And all had the same sound. And Orange County, Los Angeles County, and Orange County is right next door.
Oh, yes.
And,
I'm from Southern California.
Yeah. Orange County at the time really didn't embrace heavy metal. They were a punk community. I'm really hardcore. And
Social Distortion came from there.
Exactly. And so you had punk over here in LA, in Orange County, heavy metal, Los Angeles County, and they eventually merged and formed this thing called speed metal. We called it speed metal at the time. And that started growing rapidly. And so Pastor Bob was watching all this, and he was ministering to the bands, and and his idea one day was like, man, there's nobody that these speed metal guys, and that's what we called it at the time. I don't know, there might have been some people might have called it thrash, but he's like, we've got to put a band together, to kind of infiltrate this crowd with the gospel, and that was his idea. And he met with me and Doug Thame. Me and Doug were real close friends, and we were, of course, a big part of Sanctuary at the time. And he invited us into the office and said, "Look, you guys, we need a band that has boldly gone where no band has gone before." And are you interested in, putting this thing together? And me and Doug were like, heck yeah, we're totally interested. And that's where the idea came from. It was up to me and Doug. And so Doug and I weren't necessarily, we weren't necessarily fans of the music. Actually, we were blues-based guys. We grew up listening to Deep Purple and Johnny Winter and bands of the mid-70s and stuff were our thing. And of course, we loved heavy metal too. So now
Corner and all that good stuff.
Now, when I was in college, I was introduced to a band called the Sex Pistols. This was like in 1976.
Yeah.
And so I had a little bit of idea of what punk music was like, and so we went on a mission just to educate ourselves and see what was going on as far as what's really happening in the scene before we really started looking for players, Rooster. Our first,
interesting.
Yeah, that's the first thing we did. We started listening to some albums and more than listening to the albums, we wanted to go see shows. We started going to these thrash shows because we were really more interested in not listening to albums, but going to concerts. What made this music tick? How the people react, how they act at these shows, how they look, heavy metal at the time was spandex pants and poofy hair and guys wearing guy liner and makeup and stuff. And and of course at that time it was kind of a perfect timing because people wanted something new. You can only take so much of Poison and stuff like that. And so we started investigating and going to shows right off the bat and listening to some music. And we found out quite a bit. It was not really shocking for us, but it was different. There was a thing called the Pit. It was much more physical. It was much more, I would say, testosterone fueled.
Yes, sir.
Not a whole lot of ladies at these shows. It was mostly young men who were full of angst and emotion.
Yeah, and hate.
Yeah, well, yeah, and a lot of things like that. And the music was very, very intense. When it came down to it, now Doug was a big Black Sabbath fan, and
Gotcha.
And to us, it had the speed metal had the intensity of Black Sabbath and the heaviness, and it had the power of Judas Priest, and it had the real fast and like completely what are you talking? An attitude that the Sex Pistols had. It was kind of all wrapped into one, as what we were observing. And we listened to albums. We listened to Slayer. We listened to a band called Stormtroopers of Death quite a bit.
SOD, man.
Yeah, they had a big influence on us as far as what we're listening to and trying to absorb. So that's how things got started. And once we kind of had an education with that, we started looking for players, and we went from there. And Pastor Bob, actually, people don't know it, but he was always a member of the band. And he suggested a lot of players. His first suggestion for a group was Glenn Rogers on guitar, and a guy named Steve Bertram who played drums. Now, Pastor Bob Steve Bertram entered church, and he would talk to Pastor Bob quite a bit, and he was counseling, talking about some things in his life. And he said, I don't like any of these bands here, Pastor Bob. And he's like, really? He said, no, they're too wimpy. He said, I want something hard, something hardcore, like Venom. And once he started talking to him, he was going, man. And then he started noticing more and more of these thrash speed metal guys, hanging out, and they're looking for something to satisfy their musical cravings.
They're craving, yeah.
Yeah, and so he suggested Steve on the drums, and man, I'm telling you, we got together. Steve was a good drummer, and Glenn Rogers is a fantastic musician. And we got together and we started jamming. And Glenn had some songs, and I think Doug had a song. He had a song called it was pre-Mulligan Stew. But we rehearsed, and then we had another rehearsal. So we had two rehearsals, and I think it's about the third rehearsal. Glenn shared with us. He said, "Look, my heart's not in it. I don't really want to be part of the band." And Steve, the drummer, said, "I feel the same way." And we were like, "Okay." And Glenn said, "Now look, you guys can have these songs if you want them. I mean, just go ahead and take them, run with them." And so I said, "Well, sounds good to us." So we went through the set. We practiced one more time with the songs and shook hands and bid farewell. And that was it for the first incarnation of Vengeance. And so Doug and I were like, okay. And so
now what we're gonna do?
we had a musical education going on at the time, and Glenn's he had his music. To me, it was different because he had a lot of what can I say? His moves are real quick, his musical moves, and they would catch me off guard. They weren't quite something that I was used to, and so it was really challenging for me in the beginning. And plus, it was very quick, very fast. But the timing was what it seemed like. Sometimes it would slow down and speed up real fast.
Gotcha.
So that's
such dramatic changes, huh?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And these changes would throw you for a loop, and that was for speed metal. It was very intense, and so that was the first.
He had it down, but it was hard to catch up to him, huh?
Basically, yeah. So we talked to Pastor Bob, and I said, okay, and we continued our research, and as far as we weren't looking for players that much. We were just going, okay, let's look at going to more shows. We continued. That was our thing, and we wanted to be there. We wanted to see what was going on, and how, if anything was evolving, was something new or coming up. And so our next attempt was Pastor Bob said, "Look, I think you guys, there's a couple of people that want you to think about." It was a woman said named Sharon Shubin, said she's a vocalist, and he had an idea. He said, let's do a thrash opera is what we'll call it, because she was like an operatic singer, and we were going, I don't know. And Neon Cross at the time was a very popular Christian metal band.
Oh,
and
yeah,
their drummer,
Neon Cross is good.
Yeah, their drummer was a big dude, a heavy hitter, a hard hitter, and gosh, his name, what was his name? Anyway, his name slips my mind, but we rehearsed with them, and it was quite bizarre actually. And anyway, there were some things we learned from it. It was like, gosh, what's that dude's name? I don't know.
I would names too. I'm not gonna lie.
But
I did the same thing anyway, on my last interview. I couldn't remember his name either.
It just kind of came to a standstill, and we were started playing something really quick, and Neon Cross drummer, he was just jamming and going so fast, and he was a big dude. I mean, we're talking like it built like a linebacker, and he just gave out, and he just lost it and hyperventilating the whole thing. And Sharon said, let's switch gears. Let's do some. Like let's do something like traffic sounds, like the 405 freeway or something. And so we just started messing around and having fun with that, so we just jammed on that for a little while. And she said, "I have one more idea, you guys." I said, "What's that, Sharon?" "I want you to listen to a band called the Minutemen." And
oh yeah,
and it turned out the Minutemen, they were called the Minutemen because their songs are real short.
Yeah.
Most of them average about 60 seconds long, and
Yes, sir. Yep.
we we actually took her advice and listened to the album, some of that stuff. And anyway, after rehearsal the next day, we went to Pastor Bob and said, Pastor Bob, this is not going to work, this thrash opera idea. So we scratched that real quick. But one of the things that we learned from that, Rooster, was we needed a hard hitting drummer because we liked that.
Yeah.
We also liked, this freeform jazz odyssey, just playing. And
Yeah.
Doug was doing feedback and I liked to have a car horn, and I was doing all kinds of funky stuff. And it was fun. We learned to be spontaneous. We learned to have fun with it. And we
Exactly.
also learned these short songs is something new and something exciting that I hadn't really looked at, that I hadn't seen. And so we embraced that idea. And we said, we have to have a super hard hitting drummer. And so those are some things that was in our heart as we move forward. And so at this point, we're pretty much, we felt pretty educated as far as where we wanted to go and what we want to do. Now it's time to really look for some serious players. And one of Doug's best friends was a guy named Larry Farkas. Now, Larry Farkas, I first met Larry when he was in a band called Holy Soldier. This is a long time ago when Holy Soldier first started.
I didn't know he was in Holy Soldier.
Yeah, he was in.
Last Train was a great album.
Yeah, he was in there when Robbie Bronze was the vocals, and this was when before they had a record deal, of course, and then they just started out. And Larry was it wasn't quite, his heart wasn't quite into hair metal or glam metal. Those guys really bordered on glam metal, and so Larry had joined a band called Deliverance when Deliverance was in their infancy.
Well, Jimmy Brown.
Yeah, and at the time when I first saw Deliverance, it was even when I saw Deliverance rehearsing, and I don't even know if Larry's in the band, but Deliverance was still wearing spandex, and they were doing the heavy metal thing. And
his vocals are amazing too.
Yeah,
beyond. And honestly, between us, I've never even been much into the hair band type bands. I went straight to to you guys. I went right to Vengeance and Light Force and Mortification and Believer and Living Sacrifice, and I dove right in. Still a fan to today. I have a playlist of almost 2,000 tracks that include all that, plus more. It's just, I love it. Go ahead. Interrupted you.
No, you're good. Now, Deliverance was moving into a harder direction.
Yeah.
And
Deliverance took it to another level.
They weren't completely embracing speed metal or thrash, but Larry was really into it. Larry was developing that right hand that's really quick, like James Hetfield, that super quick down picking. He had it down, and Doug said, Roger, we need to go see my friend Larry. I said, who? And he said, yeah, he's playing with Deliverance, so they're playing in Hollywood tonight. You want to go? I said, heck yeah, let's go. And so they were playing either the Whiskey or the Roxy. I can't remember, but it was a pretty big show. And Doug and I went, and I'm telling you what, Larry was fabulous. He was just incredible that night. And we were looking at each other on the way home and going, we need to talk to Larry.
That's our boy.
So we met with Larry and told him what we were doing. And, and of course, Pastor Bob was in it. And Larry was excited about it for two reasons. He was excited about it because it was hardcore, and that's where his heart was at. And also, he saw a ministry opportunity. It's like, wow, this is something that God might, this is something that I might be supposed to do. And so he joined. And so it's me, Doug, and Larry. And so at that time, and then we're going, okay, we need to find a drummer. And so Sanctuary always had a really good praise and worship band. And they had a staple of musicians. Jim Laverty, Baron Cross was always in there, and the drummer who was mostly he was the diehard dude. His name was Glenn Mancuso, and Glenn is a pretty big dude himself. He hit real hard. His style was like Led Zeppelin, John Bonham style, hit, boom, pow, and create space and things like that. But he was a seriously heavy hitter, and we talked to him about it, and he was like, well, he was interested for one reason. He said because of the possible ministry aspect of it. You know, I mean, we're all hardcore Christians, and he's going, okay, all right, here's what I'll do for you guys. I'll be a temporary drummer. I'll get things started for you because I like what you're doing. I like what you're, the possibility of something really happening, God really moving. And so he said, okay, sounds good to us. You're the temporary drummer. And so we met with Glenn and went to the rehearsal studio, and I mean, it clicked. It was like, okay, yeah, and we're going thumbs up. Now we got a band. Well, not quite a band yet because we wanted we wanted a vocalist, and we really didn't, because all the vocalists we knew at the time were singing like, doing the melodic and stuff like that.
Like, how do they do that?
So it was Pastor Bob who suggested Roger Martinez, and when he suggested Roger Martinez, a light bulb went off in my head. And I said, I know that guy, because when I was in Emerald, one time we had a night off, and I went to a Bible study that somebody had told me about, this really big Bible study, and I walked in the door, and it was Roger Martinez was running the show. I mean, he had a projector on stage, and he had this presentation. He had a presentation called "Take Heed Ministry," and what he was doing, he was showing like secular album covers and going, "Look, you know what this means? It's kind of exposing and saying, look, this is all about this. These guys are glorifying this and this and that. Kind of letting Christians know, here's what you're listening to. It's not really edifying as far as a Christian aspect or anything like that. So that was his thing. And after the presentation, I introduced myself, and we met and really kind of hit it off, quite frankly. And I told him I was in a band called Emerald, and he said, I've heard of the band. And he said, so my mom gave him a demo tape. I can't remember, but we exchanged phone numbers. And about 3 months later, Roger Martinez, he gave me a phone, called me on the phone and said, hey, Roger, well, one thing I want to tell you, when we first met, I said, hi, I'm Roger Martin. And he laughed and said, hi, I'm Roger Martinez. And because our names are so similar. And so that was a big thing for us. It was kind of funny, even though we did not look alike. We completely different the way we looked.
Yeah, completely different.
About 3 months later, he gave me a call. He said, Roger, I'm putting together a speed metal thrash band. Are you interested in playing bass? And this was like 1985, maybe. It was 1985. And man, it was way underground at the time. And I was in Emerald, and I had some momentum going as far as what I was doing, and I wasn't about to abandon that momentum. And I said, no, Roger, I'm not interested at all. I said, okay. I appreciate you. Thank you. See you later. Bye. And I thought I'd never hear from him again. So when Pastor Bob suggested him, I thought, huh. So anyway, we scheduled rehearsal, and we were all there, and and Martinez came in, and we played through a song that we had, and he listened. He goes, oh, okay, here we go. Grab the microphone and started doing his thing, and we we within 10 seconds we were like, that's it. This is the band.
Honestly, his voice is what got me totally into
Oh,
it
it,
too.
it was the nastiest thing I'd ever heard, and we loved it.
One way of putting it.
So it was a unanimous. It only took us 10 seconds. A unanimous decision. So that was Rooster. That was the band, and that's how we actually got the band put together.
That's awesome. Now, did you? Are you a pastor?
No, no.
Okay, I thought I read somewhere that you were a pastor, but maybe I was just when I click. Sometimes I get people mixed up and intertwined, and they become their own entity.
Well, I refer to Pastor Bob a lot,
But
and so that would be,
so, but
you know,
that's awesome.
that would be easy to figure out because once again, Pastor Bob, it was me and actually it was me and Doug and Pastor Bob, the first three, and then
Yeah.
we helped, and he was always there with us. He was the sixth member of the band, and quite frankly, he still is, to this day. So, but that's how the band started.
Yeah. So then you became part of Die Happy. Die Happy was a pretty awesome band, I thought. And
Well,
then
thank you.
and then you became Once Dead. And you're not a part of Once Dead, but they're still continuing, right?
Well, Once Dead was.
It was
Well,
Larry
we did
and all
our
you guys, right?
Say that again, Rooster.
It was all of you guys for Vengeance, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
Except for
Once
Roger
Dead.
Martinez.
We were invited to play a show. I don't know. There was some interest. There was some interest in. Our first Once Dead thing is we said so people wanted us to play a show, so we said I don't know. This was the internet's infancy when MySpace was happening. All of a sudden, through MySpace, we're getting a lot of requests. I mean, you guys should do a show. You guys should, do something else as a Vengeance. And,
Yeah, because you guys broke up after Once Dead, right?
Actually,
a lot of the members, and Roger went on his own, did Destruction Comes.
Yeah, Once Dead was we called it Once Dead, and then we did a show with Scott Waters on vocals, and then those guys went overseas one time and played a show with him in Sweden.
Yeah.
And so Once Dead was something I was in for a little while, and then they wanted to do an album, but at the time I didn't feel like my heart wasn't in it, and so they actually recorded an album, and I can't even remember the name of it or whatever, but they did that, and so that was Once Dead when at that period of time. So my involvement was kind of in and out.
Tell me about yourself real quick. Got like 8 minutes left, but what got you into playing bass?
Oh,
and what kind of bass do you like to play?
Well, when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, when I was growing up, I had three brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. I'm the middle kid. I'm the middle son.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, my grandmother and Grandpa Jack for Christmas, they bought us 3 guitars. They bought they bought a guitar that looked like a Stratocaster, and then they bought a bass guitar, and they bought another guitar that looked like a 335. Thinking, well, these guys can all have guitars and play a band or whatever.
Awesome.
And it ended up that I was the only one that was interested, and I actually played all 3 of them. And I kind of gravitated toward the bass. There's something about it I really liked. And when I was 12 years old, I got invited to play in this band with some high school guys. And because they had heard somehow that I played bass. It was actually from a woman at the church, and one of her sons was played in the band, and they asked me if I'd play bass, and I was like, and then of course they talked to mom and dad, and I said, hey, want me to play bass in this band? And so they go, well, okay, well, it sounds good. And so my mom would, take me to this house where they'd rehearse, and I'd rehearse with these older guys. and it was really awesome because I mean they were talking 16, 17 years old, and they got a big kick out of me because I was of and but still it was fun, and we played songs like Jefferson Airplane, Cream, you know, that kind of stuff. Sunshine
Yeah.
of Your Love.
Oh
And that's
yeah.
how long ago it was back there. And so I'm all fired up, and all of a sudden we have a gig. We've got a party, and and the party's actually at a house. And well, the guy whose mother was in the church, she told my dad that somebody had brought a 6-pack of beer to the party. Well, so that was the end of my career with that band. That was it. Okay, so but anyway, Rooster, I caught the bug. Believe me, I mean, I was into it. I mean, I played a show. There was girls there and everything, and they were like, "Look," and I was like, "Man, whew, okay,
Felt like
this
a
is what
rock
I want
god.
to do." And
Yeah.
so
Gotcha.
that's when I embraced the bass guitar and kind of went from there, you know.
Exactly. So that's you got Reign of Glory. That's your new project. And
Yeah,
how long has that been around? Just a little briefly.
a Reign of Glory started. Now, what that how that began was Pastor Bob has he has a lot of podcasts and things like that. I don't know if you've heard Pastor Bob's podcast, and he'll have theme music that that's pretty heavy. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
background. Okay,
Yeah.
it's part uh, of his thing, and I've always wondered, man, who is that? That's some cool stuff. I said, I wonder who's doing that. I wonder who put that together. And but I got a call from a guy named Chris Norman, and he one time, and he said, Roger, there's this dude named Nick Layton, and he puts together all the music for Pastor Bob's podcast. And I'm like, okay. He said he's looking for a musical partner, a musical writing partner, and would you be interested in giving him a call? And I said, yeah, I'll call. Let me give him a call. And so I called Nick and I introduced myself, and he said, Roger, I'm thinking about putting together a hymns, like a heavy metal hymns project. It's old hymns like the Old Rugged Cross,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Oh, would love
and
that song.
all that stuff. He said, I
Yeah.
want to put it to some. I want to do an instrumental album, and with some heavy music.
Yeah.
You know, we're driving music for people, and that's. Are you interested? And I said, well, send me a couple of songs, and let me hear it. And once I listened, I was like, man, I mean, I was like, oh yeah. And I called him right back and said, yeah, I'm in. Let's do this thing. And so
Yeah.
we established a partnership. We called ourselves Layton and Martin, and we did an album. We wrote a whole album, 10 songs. We did it was called Roxology. I don't know if you've ever heard the term doxology. Well, we call it Roxology.
I have actually, yes. Oh, that's
And
crazy. Play
it's
on words.
all heavy metal stuff. It's you know, there will know we're Christmas by our love, and we have one Christmas song on there, and Dill Rocks of Rocks Records got a hold of us and said, I want to release this, Roger. I said, okay, let's do it. And so we released our first record as Layton and Martin, and it did very well. And it may still be available. I'm not quite for sure, but there were some guys that were really excited about it. Chris Norman's, Scott Heron, and Don Waits. And what they did was they created they created a website that talks about these old songs and like who wrote them and what was going on at the time and the history of these songs.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's called roxologymusic.com. It's still available now if anybody wanted to go there. And so as you're
I'm gonna
listening
check
to
that
the
out.
music, yeah, as you're listening to the music, you can read about these songs, and some of them were written. Martin Luther wrote one of them, and And so it's just a history of all that, and it's very fascinating. And those guys have kept the website up for anybody who's interested in doing that, and it really is fantastic. I don't know if you know who Doug Van Pelt is.
Yes, I do. Yes, Lust Control.
He
Heaven's
he
Metal magazine.
he was really excited about it. He called me and said, "Roger, man, this is fantastic stuff." And he did an article in Heaven's Metal magazine, and he was all excited about putting it, promoting it and everything. So I have to say thank you, Doug, for that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Okay. I'm listening to Once Dead right now. Oh, that's Rising Once Dead. I have a question about one of the tracks. Space Trucking. What's that about? The track Space Trucking?
Space Trucking, that's an old Deep Purple song. Um, it, it's a cover. Space Trucking, come on, let's go Space Trucking, come on. We had a lot of luck on Venus. It's kind of a Space Cadet song, you might say. All I know, I liked it. It was suggested, and I thought I learned it, and that was pretty much it. As far as the lyrics,
I didn't know that was a cover. Interesting.
Yeah.
Honestly, the track that got me so into Vengeance was Warfare. That track is like, you guys were in the zone with that. I mean, it just, do you remember creating that track?
Yeah, that was originally my idea. I wanted something. What I was thinking about when I started that. Have you ever started hollering and done like this with your ears? It goes whoop,
Yeah.
whoop, 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 whoop. That's what I was thinking. How can we record that? And so the rhythm is like da 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 da. And that's kind of an idea that I had and kind of started that, and everybody jumped on top of it and created Warfare. It was one of our favorites. We would sometimes we'd open the show with Warfare, and so yeah, we won on the second tour. That was always part of our show, was that song Warfare. I like how it starts. It starts with a bass and it ends with a bass with just a.
I like the Lord's Prayer at the beginning too. That was a brilliant touch.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell me about a time that was a really memorable occasion on stage with Vengeance.
My most memorable show was a promoter had booked us and Deliverance. This is when we both had albums out and we were very extremely popular. And he was from the San Diego area, and what he did was we weren't booked in San Diego. We were booked in between Los Angeles and San Diego, somewhere in there at some kind of club or something. And there was no warm up band. It was just two headliners basically, us and Deliverance. And when we pulled up to the venue in the afternoon, there was a long line of people standing outside. What in the heck? And it wasn't a big place either. We were kind of surprised that I said, well, maybe it'd be bigger on the inside. Well, anyway, we went inside and the promoter was panicking. He said, look, you guys, I don't need to talk to you. And and Deliverance was already there. And we sat down. They said, I underestimated the crowd, and I've already sold out of tickets, and there's people standing in line. He said, would you please do 2 shows back to back tonight, and so we can get everybody in. And the guy was sincere. We knew the venue was too small for the occasion. He underestimated our popularity. He actually pulled people, but he was smart because he pulled people from San Diego and pulled people from LA. And said that was the thing. He didn't think it would be like it was, but it was a really big show. And we said, okay, we're going to do that. And, I was on a podcast the other day and somebody asked me, Roger, what's the biggest crowd you ever played to? And I said, well, I don't really remember the biggest crowd. I remember the most energetic, and I talked about this show. And what happened was we flipped the coin. Who's going to go on? Who's going to open the show? And who's going to headline for the first one? So we flipped the coin, and Vengeance won. We won the toss, and we said we want to open. And Deliverance was like, "You want to open?" I said, "Yeah, we want to open." and so we're backstage, and I'm telling you, it started getting hot, physically hot, because you cram a bunch of people in one spot in the heat from the bodies, and
then the lights itself on.
The head roadie.
People do not realize how hot it gets on a stage. Really,
you
wonder why a lot of musicians play topless. It gets hot.
So our head roadie stuck his head backstage and says, "Look, you guys, man, it's they're hanging from the rafters. So look out. It's pandemonium." And I said, "Okay, sounds good." And Rooster, I remember this like it was yesterday. Now, what we would do, we'd single file. We're going, up on stage, and I happen to be the first one, kind of leading the group. And it's dark backstage. The backstage went up to the actual stage, and it's dark, and there's stairs going up to the stage. And our roadie had a flashlight, and I couldn't see anything. I saw the stairs, and so I climbed the stairs, and as soon as my foot hit the stage, the crowd exploded. I mean, it was
that's awesome,
unreal. I had never felt anything like it. As far as the adrenaline, as far it was a rush. It was so hardcore, and it was the best show. I don't know how many people were there. There was I don't know 300 or 400 people or something like that, but they were on fire. And
that was Deliverance's Weapons of Warfare tour.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know we were hot. We were both
such a brilliant album,
and so that was a memorable show. The fans fired us up. We gave back. They gave back to us, and it was absolutely incredible. And that, to me, now that was my favorite. My second favorite show was at a festival called Cornerstone.
Yes, Cornerstone. Yep.
We were booked with the Crucified, which is a Christian punk band. And now on that one, the Crucified opened up, and I don't know if you call us headliners or not, but that was a memorable show too. It was one again. They had like maybe half a dozen stages at the Cornerstone, or maybe even more. But this one was in one of those big tin buildings, and it's in the summer, and it's super hot. There is no air conditioning, and it's packed. It's another one of those blazing hot times, but it's another memorable show because of the excitement of the fans. And we played quite a few shows with the Crucified. And so we were all backstage, and we were on tour at the time, and they may have been also. I think they may have been. And so it was good to see each other again. And Cornerstone back then was an event. It was kind of like Immortal Fest. Now Immortal Fest, as far as my mind goes, I don't know if you've heard about that festival.
I did hear about it. I know that Vengeance gonna be playing at it with Luke Easter singing.
Yeah,
and Brian's going to be there, and a whole bunch of different bands.
It has taken the place. It is the ultimate heavy metal Christian festival, and it started in 2022, 23, 24. Yeah, it started in 2022, and Reign of Glory played in 2023, and we played last year, 2024, and we're going to play again this year. But it's I'm kind of switching gears, but yeah, Richard, those are two of my favorite shows. One was with the Crucified, and one was with Deliverance.
Crucified was actually the punk band that got me into Christian punk. I absolutely love Pillars of Humanity and all that.
Oh yeah.
They're amazing, man. Mark Solomon and Jim on drums. Oh, Jim is just one of the best drummers.
Oh, he's
Jim Shepard.
fantastic.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Jim Chaffin actually on the
Yeah,
first Reign of Glory album, Jim Chaffin did drums for us.
Yeah, I did notice that. I did.
Yeah, and he played our first show at Immortal Fest. He played in 2023 with us, and so he's a fantastic drummer. He does a fantastic job live and in the studio too. I can't. I mean, he's a professional, that's for sure.
So, if you don't mind, how about tell us your testimony?
My testimony?
Yeah.
Okay.
How did you become a Christian?
My parents were both Christians, and I grew up in church, you might say, in Methodist church, a little small. I'm from Oklahoma. I'm from a rural part. In fact,
I was born in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm from a place called. Yeah, it's just now. Oklahoma has a lot of country. My community was called Pleasant Hill, which had about 100 people in Pleasant Hill. I went to the first grade in Pleasant Hill, and there was 4 classes in one room, and there was 3 people in the first grade. It was me, a guy named Ricky Story, and Dusty Hoser. That's how small the little town was back when you had little bitty schools. But anyway, there was a little Methodist church there that I grew up in, and there was some teenagers there, and it was around 1964, 1965, something like that. I was 6 years old, and I noticed one Sunday these teenagers were all excited because the Beatles were playing on the Ed Sullivan Show that night, and we used to watch the Ed Sullivan Show. I didn't know who the Beatles were. I was a little kid, and so that night I'm sitting there watching the Beatles, and I'm going, whoa! And so it kind of freaked me out. One thing about it was what really got my attention, because we were all watching, and the next day, I noticed people. There was 2 classes of people. You either liked the Beatles or you hated them. There was no in between.
Yeah, I love the Beatles.
And a lot of the men say, "Oh, they look like girls with their long hair." And then when I'm watching, I now remember when all the girls were screaming and going crazy about these guys. And so, as a young boy, I thought, man, these guys, these musicians really are they're turning people's heads. They're being very influential. And so about a couple of weeks later after that, the church had this little youth Bible study or after church fellowship, and the guys, the teenagers, they actually brought a guitar and they were singing Beatles songs. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I grew up in a church, and I grew up with the Beatles, and it's almost like, because back in those days, the Beatles in church did not. I mean, that was no.
Yeah,
you know, and some churches you couldn't even have a piano, or else you were of the devil. They would say.
I get
and so, at a very young age, I connected church and modern music, rock music, which was really bizarre. Now, one time when I was 12 years old, they used to have these things called revivals, and
exactly like tent revivals or whatever.
Yeah, they had a revival, and the preacher preached every night of the week, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and on Monday night he gave an invitation. He's it was a gospel message, and said, "You're going to hell if you don't accept Jesus as your Savior." And they started playing this song in the back, "Just As I Am." with just one play. And man, I'm 12 years old. I'm going, oh my gosh! And so come down to the altar, and I'm running down the altar.
Yes, sir.
Pick me, and so gave my life to the Lord, and then the next night, because everybody went every night, and so on Tuesday night, the same thing. Pastor gave the same invitation, and I'm running down there again on Tuesday night, and and then again on Wednesday. Guess who's running down to the altar? And
Yeah.
Wednesday night, my mom's like, Roger, sit down, son. I'm going to talk to you. You don't have to do this every night. I mean, once is good. I was like, okay, good. So that was,
That's funny.
I was, it was, it
You
was an
thought you had to
emotional
receive Christ every day?
Yeah. And so she
Funny.
reassured me, you're okay. You're not going to lose your salvation. I'm going, okay, we're good. And
We're good.
so that's when in your Christian walk, there's different phases, you might say. And so
Yeah.
I had a phase. I can actually remember praying in the closet when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember that, and I asked God something, and He answered it. And I've never shared it with anybody in the whole world. I never have, and I never will. But anyway, that as I journeyed through, so you might say I grew up in a Christian home, and of course, I've had my journeys like a lot of people, but that's
We're
the
only
story.
human.
That's my testimony. And then another thing, this was a big turning point too with my relationship with God was when I I was back in. I started being once I went into college. I started getting into bands. I started playing in the bands in Oklahoma, local band. And back then, in 1976, mid '70s, if you had a cover band, man, you could make some money because the only entertainment there was music. There was no. I mean, for our generation, that was it. There was no gaming. There was no internet. There was nothing. It was girls and music, and so I was really into that, and so I really wanted to be a professional musician, but in Dogtick, Oklahoma, there's not many opportunities for that. I mean, beer joints might be your top of the line, but so at the time. I was introduced to a young man. His name was John Michael Baxter. He was a child prodigy. He was 15 or 16 years old, and he could play all the Van Halen stuff. He could play Van Halen's first album, and I was like, his mom invited me to come over and jam with her because his mom was part of a church,
And
and she
Stairway
knew
to
that.
Heaven was one of
Yeah,
the first tracks I
and
tried to learn.
yeah, and I jammed with him, and I'm going, dude, let's have a tribute band because he had two bands. He liked Van Halen and he liked Ozzy Osbourne, the one with Randy Rhoads, the Blizzard of Oz album.
Oh yeah.
And so we
Great
had
album.
a combination Ozzy and a Van Halen tribute band back then. But I was after. I went to college for a couple of years and I studied some music, but I dropped out and I started working. I started doing kind of traveling with this construction company. And anyway, I was in between jobs and I was playing in this band. And my dad called me. He said, "Hey, these guys from Brown and Root Construction Company want you to go to California. There's a job out in Los Angeles." And I was like, "What?" And so I knew what was going on in LA. And I was, man, I talked to the guy on the phone. They said, "Yeah, Roger, we got a job right outside of L.A., a little town called Ontario, and
Ontario.
building a paper mill. There's a paper mill out there,
Yeah,
and
there's a good burrito place called Chili Red. They have these burritos that are like over a foot long, and
whoa,
the lip throbber and all that stuff. It's in Ontario. I know
okay,
about Ontario. My dad used to
okay,
work out there.
all right.
Go
So
ahead.
you know
Sorry
what I'm
about
talking
interrupting
about.
you.
So I drove to So I had a pickup truck, and I drove from Oklahoma to Ontario. Actually, I found a place in Petal. No, not Petal. What was the name of that town? Fontana.
Montana.
Fontana.
Yep.
And Fontana was right next to Ontario because I couldn't find it. But anyway, I settled in Fontana. That's where I stayed because some of the guys I knew that were working at the job site, they said, we're staying in Fontana. There's some apartments there. I said, okay. So I went to Fontana and oh, I was excited because I mean I had all my stuff in the bag. I didn't have much. I didn't want. I mean, when I was a young man, I think I was 26. Yeah, when I moved
Yeah.
to Fontana, and I arrived on Halloween night, 1984. It was October 31st, 1984, and I rented a hotel, and the very next morning. I went looking for a music store because back then, if you wanted to get in a band, you'd go to a music store and they had a bulletin board of all the bands looking for musicians. I mean, this was way before the internet and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and it was real early, and I found a music store in town, and I pulled in there and went inside, and there was two people in the store.
Hmm.
There was the guy running the store, and there was another dude, long haired guy over there, playing the guitar, like he'd normal music store. So I walked up to the owner and I said, "Hey, my name is Roger Del Martin. I'm a bass player. Do you know of any bands looking for a bass player?" And he looked at me and he looked over at that guy and said, "Yeah, I do. That guy right over there is looking for a bass player." And so I went over there and I said, "Hi, I'm Roger Del Martin." He said, "Hi, I'm Dave Ennis." And he he said, "Grab a bass off the wall, plug into this amp." And he started playing the intro to Crazy Train by Ozzy. Dun 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 dun. And it just so happened that I was in an Ozzy tribute band and I knew the song note for note. And so,
Awesome.
so basically, I had an audition. And he said, "I've got a band called Emerald." And he leaned forward, he said, "Do you have any bad habits?" And I was like, "What do you mean by bad habits?" He said, "I want you to go somewhere with me tonight." I said, "Okay." And anyway, I didn't know what it was about. So I said, "Meet me over here at the hotel, whatever." And well, I was knocking on the door and I opened the door, and it wasn't Dave. It was the store owner. He said, "Dave couldn't make it, but I'll take you to this place." I said, "Let's go." And so I had no idea where we're going, but I was going. And we drove up to this place, and on the side of it said Harvest Christian Fellowship.
Harvest Christian Fellowship. Yeah.
And
Okay.
and I said, "Oh, we're going to church." And so we go into church, and there was a band playing on stage. It was the Daryl Mansfield band.
Oh my Lord. Yeah, I know Daryl Mansfield. Yeah.
And I mean, I
Good
was
stuff.
I was going, "Whoa, this is the best blues band I have ever heard." Daryl Monica was playing the harmonica, and they were
Yeah.
fantastic. And at the end of his set, he said, "Look, if there's anybody out there that wants to rededicate their life to Jesus Christ, come on down." Guess what?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ran down that night,
That's good.
and that was another big step in my journey with the Lord.
That's cool.
Uh, and and so basically, I was invited the next day to the Emerald's rehearsal studio,
Yeah.
and they said, "Brother, here's a song we got," and they played a song called "Armed for Battle." I said, "Okay, join in," and I'm like, I did the best I could with what little preparation I had. Just kind of listened. They said, "Here's what the key is in. You're in 4/4 timing, or whatever," and so I play it, and we end the song, and there was silence, and they looked at each other, and the drummer Kyle Moretz said, sounds a lot better with the bass. So I passed the audition, and then that's when I began my music career, you might say, in California. Was with that night with Embrems.
um, now this next thing, I do want to ask you because we kind of stopped with the Vengeance. Um, why did everybody split? If you don't
Well,
mind asking, because I really don't have anybody else to ask. I mean, you're the man, and you're a part of it.
yeah,
Why
well,
why did Roger go his one way and you guys went your way?
after the second tour, for I can speak for myself of
Yes,
where
sir.
I left the group. After the second tour, we had a lot of on paper. Well, what I'm saying on the second tour on paper, we were coming out looking good. Everybody making profit.
Yeah.
We had salaries. We had everything set up. We pay bills at home, come back, and we were good to go. Well, a lot of things happened, um, and also I had my first son, Jim Dandy, and then it was his name and is his name. And when I'm on tour, I'm missing my son, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
like a lot of musicians do, and
Yeah.
and and
I bet it's tough
to,
for a family man.
okay, and
Yeah, I
and,
can
and
see
to
that.
me, there was tension on tour, the second tour, and things were difficult. And I thought, in my heart, I thought, I think my time's done. I think I'm done with. I think God's done with me with Vengeance. And our last show on the second tour was in Austin, Texas. And after the show, I didn't get back on the tour bus or the tour van. And I said, somebody take me to the airport. I'm flying to LA because I was done. And
Gotcha.
on the flight back, I'm praying and I'm thinking, okay, I'm done. Shit, when the guys get back, I'm telling them I'm retiring from the group, and so uh, everybody got back, and then uh, Martinez, he didn't really take a vacation after tour. He flew straight to Australia, and I think he started producing a band called Mortification. I don't know if you've heard of those guys.
Of course, Steve Rowe, man.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I love mortification. That's just come on,
he
brutal warfare, man.
yeah, so I called a meeting and I said, look, you guys, I'm not feeling anymore. I feel like it. I feel like the band's done. Well, I know one thing, I'm done with the band and I'm retiring from the group. And everybody else, they thought, to my surprise, they're like they felt the same way. They're like, okay, yeah, I think we're done. Well, we said, and and uh, and so and of course Martinez wasn't there. It was just me, Doug, Larry, and Glenn, and then we owed some money for some merchandise because of all the stuff, and we had shows canceled and people ripped us off, all kinds of things like that, and so we owed. Not only did we suffer individually, but the band itself was in the red, and so. But we still had our merchandise, and then we go, okay, here's what we'll do. We're gonna do a big festival uh, in LA. Like I don't know if you've heard of. There was a big festival we did, Metal Mardi Gras. We talked to Pastor Bob and said, let's do Metal Mardi Gras, we'll this big festival. We're gonna sell all of our merchandise and then we'll pay off our merchandise. This is no big deal. We could have done it pretty easy because when you had a big show on tour, we would sell the merchandise back. Man, believe me,
Yeah.
everybody
I still
they
don't even
wanted
have a Vengeance shirt, man. I wish
they
I
wanted the
did.
T-shirt and the hat, and so that was our plan.
Yeah.
And then when Martinez got back from Australia or wherever it was, I think that's where it
Yeah,
was.
it's Australia.
We had a meeting and he was like, "Oh no 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 no." I mean, the band, I said, members can come and go, but the band, I said, the band's going to go on forever. I'm like, no. And he said, yeah. I said, I want the band. I said, well, okay, well, if you want to continue, we'll give you all the merchandise, and you can use the name Vengeance and Vengeance Rising. You can use the name, and you hire people. And we still had another album or two on the contract with a record company. So we were going to, it's like, and so he said, I said, and so that was the thing. I said, I don't care. I said, I don't care. So he was excited about it because he had his choice. He could hire musicians, fulfill the contract. He's got merchandise and everything. And so we made up a contract right there, and the contract said, because I used to make contracts, and I wrote it up, and it was that night. It said, I, Roger Martinez, am responsible for the debts of Vengeance Rising, past, present, and future. He signed it. We all signed it. Okay, and that was it. He took off, and that was the thing. And we all made copies. Everybody got a copy. I made a copy, and the next day I sent it. I gave it to Pastor Bob. I said, Pastor Bob, the band's over, and Martinez, here's a contract here, and I gave him one contract, and he's like, wow, this changes everything. I said, yeah, it does. And so I was done, and so I started looking for another band after that, and I actually got into I joined a band called the Triple Ace Band, and they were a biker band. They were a Christian biker band. We had two motorcycle groups that we used to go to. They called them biker runs. There was a group called Christ Motor Club, and then one called Bikers for Christ. We would go to prisons. We would play biker shows, and I did that. And then
awesome.
My
mom was a biker, so I understand.
Yeah, and
I grew up with that. My mom had a trike and a Harley.
I was in the band for about 6 months, and I got a call from Doug Thiem, and he said, Roger, I said, what's going on? Doug said, I've signed a contract with Frontline Records, and I'm going to do another album. Would you like to play bass on it? I said, heck. And I said, man, yeah, very interesting. And at that point, Doug and we realized how to make money. As far as we knew that a record company would pay a producer.
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes they'd shell out some big bucks. So Doug made a deal with the record company and said, look, we're going to produce the album ourselves. So that money that you would have paid to Ron Gowdy or whoever, pay it to us. And he told me about the business arrangement, and I was like, yeah, let's freaking do it.
That's awesome.
And Doug had songs, and we started looking for players, and then he put everybody. He called Larry, and Larry said, yeah, I'll do it. And he called Glenn. And I had said a lot of some people mistakenly think that we quit Vengeance to form Die Happy. That was the last thing on our minds. Nobody signed a contract. Doug was the only one who had a record deal. And basically I was in Triple Ace Band, and I basically did it for the money because it was good money. And of course I gave it 100%. But after the recording of the album, I was out of there. I said, love you, mean it. I'll see you guys later. And I went back to playing with Triple Ace Band.
Yeah.
And now they went on to do another album. They replaced me, and they did some shows and stuff. I never played the show with Die Happy. So that's the story from my perspective on the end of Vengeance. And really what the deal was with Die Happy. My involvement with Die Happy was one album, was the first one,
Skull,
and that was it.
The Skull, the Crossbones on it, all that good stuff, and that was a good album. Really,
Thank you.
Good job on that. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
just I from you and basically a general idea of what was going on, and I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's you can tell the true love that you have for not only God but for playing bass and just for writing music and getting that what's inside out. And I appreciate that. Sometimes life can be really heavy,
Yes, sir.
and so it's a music is such a powerful way of laying that out, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what you've done, and so thank you very much for being a
You're welcome.
splendid guest on my show, and you're always welcome. And I hope to have you back with Reign of Glory.
Love
You work
to.
something out, and we'll keep in contact. And I appreciate you, man. God bless you.
God
and your
bless you, my
ministry.
brother.
You too, buddy.
See ya.
More rock, less cock here on the Rooster Show. We had Roger Dale Martin, and thank you, sir. You take care of yourself. Bless you and your family.
Yes, sir. See you later.
See you later.
Yes,